the Hypnotic World Epicenter, Mike Mandel, Hypnosis.com.
Hypnosis is an unbelievably fascinating field and topic, but you know, it is absolutely full of mythologies, all kinds of things that people just know are true, except they're not. And a lot of these mythologies hold people back from learning this fantastic field that can absolutely enrich your life. Myth number one. In order to understand hypnosis, in order to practice hypnosis, you have to buy books full of scripts that you read at people, or have stacks and stacks of cue cards that are going to tell you how to deal with smoking cessation or weight management or putting someone into a trance, and you're going to sit there across from someone and read at them. This is nonsensical and ridiculous. In fact, a lot of the old studies say things like, only 10% of people can be really good hypnotic subjects. Well, what are those studies based on? They're based on stupid scripts. Because if the study is designed to take a number of people in a room, play what used to be a 33 1/3 RPM record at them all, and then note how many people go into a deep trance, how many go into a medium trance, a light trance, or not at all based on this one ludicrous method of reading a script at them, it's stupid. The reality is, you're not going to read a script at someone and treat them like an object that you're trying to browbeat into a trance or cause some kind of ridiculous response. If you do that, it'll work sometimes, but you can play a tape, you can play a CD and get exactly the same result. Hypnosis isn't about that. It's a conversation. It's an interaction between you and a subject where you enter something called a psychodynamic loop. This is the truth about hypnosis. You don't have to do this cause and effect, hammer them into the ground with some kind of script. Instead, you enter this loop with them conversationally. The person reacts by going into a trance. And you'll hear all kinds of things nowadays. Conversational hypnosis. We teach Hypnosis is a conversation, and all conversations are by their very nature hypnotic. Because if I tell you about the cottage I used to have at Hikes Island on the Trent River, and we used to go up there, my family and I, and we'd take the boat across, a little 10 horsepower motor, and it would be cold out a lot of the time, and the water would be choppy, and we'd arrive at our island and get out and tie the rope around the dock and get everything carried in the rain to the cottage, and it would take several minutes for it to heat up with the oil stove on and the smell of the oil, and we'd gradually warm up and look out over the lake and the river at the water. No, listen, you're making an internal representation based on what I'm telling you, purely from the words themselves. That is just in its nature hypnotic. And every single person who's listening to me saying this is making a totally different internal representation. None of you are seeing my real cottage. You're all seeing stuff based on the language that is causing internal shifts with you right now. So what I'm saying with all this is, not only don't you need scripts, but every time you have a conversation with someone, you are directing their attention internally and causing a response. Now, if you make the response emotional as well, if you bring in the emotions, whether it's fear, anger, sadness, happiness, joy, rage, whatever it is, any kind of emotional response will tend to intensify this internal state that you are getting. That's why films are so effective. Blockbuster movies do all of those things. They make you scared, they make you happy, they make you get a rush of adrenaline, and all of those enable you to interact with something happening on a screen. Now, they're not reading a script at you, they're generating an internal state. You are in a feedback loop now with the movie, with the actors, with the people in the story, as though they were real people. And you're creating all these internal responses. So back to our point. Instead of reading a script at someone, you interact with a living human being. It is a flow in the relationship between the two of you. And one of the secrets to doing hypnosis is something called the run-on sentence. Now, if I speak in very concrete terms, I had a cottage on an island in Hastings, Ontario. You make a representation, Mike had a cottage on an island in Hastings, period. That's pretty straightforward. But if I begin to do a run-on sentence and begin to generate language on the fly, and instead of giving you concrete things about the cottage, start talking in terms of how that place where we used to go in the summer was not only warm and comfortable, but could be a refuge from the cares of life. And as we made the travel and went across the river at the appropriate time every year when my father had his vacation, and the family was together and discovered in the depths of that time spent, all of us alone, isolated on that island, we could engage in all sorts of things, from conversation to games to fishing, and the changes that would occur would be appropriate for us and would give us that necessary break. Now, this is one frickin' sentence. I haven't said period yet. I haven't stopped. I'm just talking. And I'm talking and talking and talking. And what's happening is your brain is following all of these shifts of meaning. So if I give you concrete stuff, he went to the store, period. There, it's concise. It's packaged, it's compartmentalized. It's this one little thing, he went to the store, period. But if I say to you, and on the way, as he traveled and made that trip to the store, there were different understandings that began with him as he reviewed the trip itself and thought not just in terms of all of those things that he had to purchase, but thought back to the place that he had just left and the people who were no longer with him as he walked towards the plaza itself and began to generate the kind of internal states that were concomitant at a deep level with making the sort of purchase. Now listen, I'm saying nothing. This is fluff. This is verbal fluff. And you are forced to go inside and generate meaning based on this never-ending sentence that goes on and on and on and on. But it generates hypnotic trance. Because anything that causes your attention to go inward and evaluate and really begin to try to understand what I'm saying will cause you to not only drift into a trance, but feel the different shifts in meaning that will apply to you as well. And as you put all of those pieces in place and begin to recognize how they are dropping into the context of your own life, it's a simple thing to apply those run-on sentences even to any topic at all, the way I'm doing it right now. There's another one. So you're inwardly, constantly following the shifting in meaning. And the easiest way of doing a run-on sentence is to say, and as. And as, and as. You can connect anything with and as. And as you connect all of those things by using and as you recognize that you too automatically have this amazing power to do run-on sentences, and as you realize there are numerous ways you can apply this to your own life that are fun and enjoyable, and even with your friends by sitting down with them somewhere and saying, let me tell you about this thing that happened. And as you start to unwrap this never-ending sentence for them, they'll be following you further and further and beginning to generate hypnotic trances. Trance is normal. It's part of our conversation. It's part of our interaction with other human beings. And when you interact with them, when you enter that psychodynamic loop and do long run-on sentences, they get sucked into the hypnotic vortex. You don't have to sit and read at them, this scripted thing. You feedback and dance with them mentally, shifting as they shift. It's like a martial art of the mind. It's easy when you know how to do it properly. So not only are scripts not necessary to do hypnosis, they can actually get in the way of you interacting with another person. And you want to interact with them in order to generate trance and watch them as you generate trance. And you can't watch them if you're sitting reading a piece of paper at them. So that's myth number one. You don't have to read scripts at people. They're a waste of time. So there are two more hypnotic myths that we have to cover. And we'll be breaking them down and explaining to you some cool stuff you can do on the next two videos.
Hey Mike, how was your trip to Ireland?
Well, Chris, it's funny you should ask me that. My trip to Ireland was really, really interesting. We got on a plane and flew all the way to Dublin where we landed. Then we got off the plane and got into a bus. The bus took us to Lachine Castle. Imagine using scripts for everything in your stupid life.
The Hypnotic World Epicenter. MikeMandelHypnosis.com.